Hello and welcome to Gardening Australia. We have got a bumper crop of ideas, colour and inspiration coming your way this week. So let's get stuck in.
I'm visiting a food relief project growing healthy, fresh food for those in the community most in need.
Tammy shows us how to pot up one of her favourites.
And this one in particular is in dire need of a tidy up.
It might be a bit cold for some of you, but now is a great time to be planting for autumn colour. And I've got some beauties to show you.
And I'm meeting a couple who were more than qualified to design their own garden. And it is absolutely delightful. But you'd expect so, because they're both landscape architects.
One of the joys of gardening is carving out a space for local wildlife to enjoy. Some of you at home might have a bee hotel or a bird box, or maybe even a simple bird bath like this one. Sophie's found a gardener who's taking this thinking to the next level.
Brendan Carrick is a landscaper, but with a difference. He creates gorgeous aquatic ecosystems in suburban gardens, but has also been busy at his own place in Ranella in Adelaide. So how have you designed this front area?
So this is more of a bush-style garden. I've embraced the wild a little bit here. I've put in a bunch of tube stocks about 3 years ago and adopting that naturalised bush garden feel, kind of letting it roam as it will, not doing too much to it, letting it be wild.
So you've got some stunning native plants out here. Why have you chosen this beautiful Acacia glaucoptera?
Well, I chose this one just because it's got really lovely stems, and I think they're not actually leaves, but modified stems, and I just love the colour that they have, so it's a very architectural type of plant.
Now, you've also got that beautiful eucalypt.
Yeah, that's only 3 years old, and that went in as a little tube stock about that big, and I've kept the water up over summer, and it's just done really well.
Now, I love this water feature here, and it looks like a really simple concept that anyone could make at home.
Yeah, that's right. It's very simple. All it consists of is a dish and then some gravel and some plants, and you fill it up every now and again. But it's great because it's relatively low maintenance and it provides water to our beneficial insects like bees and native flies and stuff, mainly the pollinators. So they'll come and land on a rock and they're able to come down into the water and have a drink without worrying about drowning or anything like that. And the plants themselves, you remove the soil from them and just plant them bare roots into the gravel. And the plants will pull nutrients from the water, and it's basically a environmentally friendly filtration method.
I love it. Brendan's interest in wildlife and gardening began at an early age back in New Zealand.
Yeah, going out for hikes and walks through the bush, seeing those beautiful streams. The waterfalls in New Zealand are pretty renowned, and then you've got the moss and the ferns and stuff. So I really gravitated to that. Experiencing the wildlife of New Zealand in the bush, it kind of gave me a passion to utilise biomimicry, which is you're trying to create nature in a suburban space in order to get that wildlife interaction. Using flowering plants and having logs and trees around the garden can really increase the biodiversity that you have in your yard. So I really enjoy doing that.
Do you think it's important for people to increase the biodiversity in an urban setting?
Yeah, definitely, because all over Australia you have wild spaces that are kind of on the decline overall, and people underestimate the power that you can have in your own garden to provide habitat for birds and insects and reptiles. Just by having a bit of wildness in your garden is basically extremely important, and I think more people should do it. It's relatively easy.
This is an impressive water feature in quite a tight space. How did you go about it?
To start off, obviously, you have to dig a big hole, and then you want to use a rubber liner. EDPM rubber liner is always advised, as opposed to plastics. And then you want to find rock and gravel from your local quarry, and just start making shelves and stacking the rocks in there in a nice, beautiful way. And then from there, you can start to add plants and logs and turn it into a beautiful ecosystem. The turtle in there, his name's Charlie, and he's a River Murray short-necked turtle. He enjoys the crystal clear water, and that's from the beneficial bacteria within the skimmer box and the biofilms. So having a skimmer pulls the debris into that box there, and basically you just remove a little basket of leaf and debris, and that takes control of the stuff that lands on the surface. And then up here is where you've got the beneficial bacteria breaking down the nutrients, taking it from ammonia and nitrites and turning it into healthy compounds that the plants can absorb.
So that's why the water's so crystal clear, and then you don't need to clean it or remake it.
That's right. So I've only ever done a clean out on this pond once.
As you come around the corner, the first thing you feel is how cool it is. But now I see this, no wonder.
Yeah, that's right. Like the water and the waterfalls actually helps provide a really cooling atmosphere over here. It's almost like a little micro-environment.
It certainly is. Now, this is massive. How big is it?
This is about 8 to 10 metres from top of the waterfalls to end of the pond.
And you've got lots of different levels and ledges, so you can get the different vegetation happening.
That's right.
How long did it take you to build this one?
From start to finish, it was a year in the making, so it took quite a while.
Now, as I look at this green wall is really cleverly designed because it adds the planting up the vertical space. But also, when I look closely, they're just plants that you've positioned in pots.
That's right, yeah. So initially, when I first built it, we just had the fence there. And instead of kind of using like a climber or something, I wanted to provide a really kind of jungly and ferny type of environment. So I've basically just adhered a number of logs to the wall and then wired up the plants to go alongside those, and then they're all irrigated separately with drippers.
This is great use of a very narrow space, but what impresses me the most is you are right next to a freeway, and yet all I can hear is the beautiful sound of running water.
Yeah, when we first moved in, the sound of the road was a little bit abrasive. So we started off with that front pond, and that provided a nice ambience to the front of the house. But we wanted something a little bit more impactful, so I designed this water feature, and I wanted to have some nice crashing waterfalls to kind of drown out that sound of the road.
And its habitat as well. So tell me about your turtles.
Yeah, so at the moment I have 7 turtles. These are all turtles that have been rehomed, that people have reached out to me in order for me to take them. So these are River Murray short-necked turtles. They're native to the Murray-Darling Basin, and they exist in ponds and lagoons and freshwater systems. However, here it's a closed system, so I've tried to incorporate a lot of biomimicry. So I've got a lot of basking spots, I've got caves, I've got waterfalls. The water's super crystal clear to keep them happy as well.
Often people buy them as pets when they're this big, but they probably haven't thought through how much space they need as they grow to this size.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of people will buy really small turtles, River Murray short-necked turtles and long-necked turtles from the shop when they're about the size of a 20-cent coin. For most people, they take really good care of the turtles, but a lot of people kind of get them when they're so small, expecting them not to grow that much. But like Flash here, she's basically the size of a dinner plate. So it's important when we get these pets to know what type of needs they require and what type of habitat they'll thrive in.
Well, they're obviously happy. It's spectacular. One of the reasons your water features look so natural is your use of moss. But we can't harvest it from the wild, so how do you grow it?
That's right. So, yeah, you never want to take moss and other plants from the wild. So there are a number of tricks that you can do to help propagate moss. In a system like this, where there's all this moist and kind of damp rocks and logs around the place, what you can do is use a brew of something with a lot of sugar in it, like buttermilk or beer. And you can take a small amount of moss from a roadside curb or somewhere where you could find where it's not in the environment. You can blend it up and you can get a paintbrush and use that mixture and just paint it onto the rocks. And from there, the spores and parts of the moss tissue will start to propagate and go all over the rocks. And over time, you'll get little spore heads popping up, and they'll propagate it as well.
Brendan takes his inspiration from natural ecosystems to create gardens that are welcoming to wildlife, but also provide a peaceful garden retreat.
There's something very special about water, being able to hear it, being able to sit next to a flowing stream that feels like it's a very living and evolving thing.
What is IPM? Well, it's an acronym that stands for Integrated Pest Management, and it really is a whole-of-system approach. Instead of finding a pest and targeting it directly, IPM asks you to look at the whole system, the ecosystem of your garden, or if you're doing it commercially, your farm. It includes lots of techniques, things like planting lots of flowers to bring in the beneficial insects, those predators that will take care of a pest problem, and of course things like crop rotation that might help to reduce disease. But essentially, it is a great way for gardeners and farmers to see their garden and their problems in the big picture, and really to work to keep those natural systems playing along together for the best outcome.
Is mould in your worm farm okay? Sometimes opening up your worm farm can be a surprise ecological experience, with things creeping and crawling all over the place, including some mushrooms or mould growing in the space too. Most of the time, this is totally fine, as they can actually help your food scraps break down. But if it gets a bit too overwhelming, you can ease up on the amount of food scraps going in to give your worms a chance to catch up.
Why does my grass tree look sick? After a recent wet spell, this grass tree has been impacted by scale. You can see them, they're all over these soft parts, sucking nutrient from the plant. Sometimes birds will get in and eat the scale off for you, but on a grass tree, the outer foliage is really tough. It's hard to get through. It's going to need some human intervention. Horticultural oil will smother scale, but spray only on days under 25 degrees. Or the oil might also stop the plant transpiring. And with a follow-up treatment, you should be able to catch it all. But bear in mind, scale can attack weak plants. So keep an eye on the condition of your grass tree and its general health, just to be sure.
Gardening is an act of faith in the future. And as gardeners, we know that the answer to a lot of the issues in the world can be found right here in the garden, digging in the soil. Jerry's found a group in Queensland who are tackling a tough problem and making a real difference.
I'm in Loganlee, about half an hour south of Brisbane. And here, in the agricultural grounds of the local state high school, is the Mini Farm Project. It's what you'd call an urban farm charity, and it was founded in 2014 by Nick Steiner.
I wanted to do something different than being in hospitality for the rest of my life, and I thought, well, it's time to actually give back. Maybe we need an organisation that's actually growing food deliberately for charities around the country.
How did it actually start?
Well, it started by me converting my backyard into an urban farm to test the processes to see if the idea would actually hold water and work. So I converted my lawn into something very similar to this farm, and we grew produce. And I just came to the idea of setting up a charity to create a network of charity farms, growing things from fruit, vegetables, fish, chicken eggs, bush foods, honey, and other things as well, every week for free for charity.
So what motivates you with this project?
It actually hurts me to see children in this country go hungry.
So there's not enough food for people in need?
No, charities that we're dealing with at the moment are struggling to find good quality food, food at all. I saw recently on Oz Harvest on Facebook, they have over 670 charities waiting on food.
So how big a problem is this?
1 in 5 Australian households is going hungry each and every single day, and that's parents and children.
So this is an increasing issue, or is this been an issue for a long time?
Before COVID, it was overwhelming to charities, the amount of need, but post-COVID, it's exploded. In 2020, in the Logan community, there was over 50,000 people who required daily food assistance, and the council wanted to do something about it. We're partnered with the council, Griffith University and Logan Lee State High School, and we have this parcel of land given to us on a peppercorn lease. Hi everyone, Nick from the Mini Farm Project. Down here today at Logan Lee State High Charity Farm with Kirsty, who's busily preparing beds to be planted this week. Next week we'll be starting stage 2.
One of the staff responsible for running the farm at the school site is Logan Lee State High graduate Kirsty Wright, who took to horticulture as a career tree change from an admin role last year. So what's it like working here?
I totally love coming to this ag centre every day and growing food to help people in need. It's an absolutely self-rewarding feeling that I can't describe.
So what would an average week be like for you?
Well, we do bed prep, planting, harvesting, weeding and looking after the crops.
So what sort of crops are you growing?
Well, everything we grow here is organic and nutritious. So our long-term crops are brassicas, including cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, celery. We also do beetroot, carrot, kale. We also have short-term crops that we plant every single week, lettuces, and we've also had Asian greens, which the cockatoos absolutely love as well.
They're onto a good thing.
Yes, they are.
And does having the mini farm in the school grounds make a difference?
It totally makes a difference. When we have the students coming to help, they just put all their energy into everything they do, which is great. And it makes them aware that they're helping people in need in our own community as well.
I'm Liana. I'm Alexis. I'm Bailey.
Do you enjoy volunteering here?
Yes. I like planting things and learning about different plants and vegetables. I help doing all the dirty work, so like wheelbarrowing and mulching. The greatest part about volunteering here is that we get to make friendships, and everyone here at the volunteering are like family.
The organisation now operates 3 active urban farm sites across Brisbane, and there's a new one just waiting to be planted out on the Sunshine Coast. They're growing fresh food year-round and donating it to food relief charities who, in turn, get this much-needed produce to those most in need. How many meals would this farm currently be producing?
We're now doing 200 meals a week. And with stage 2 coming on board, we'll be doing about 400 meals a week, which comes to about 20,000 meals in a year for a half-acre site.
Wow, that's productive. You see, this one's starting to flower now.
Yeah, and look at this quality.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm amazed that they're not being eaten at the moment. How do you get the money to do this? Because this is really intensive, the work you're doing here.
Obviously, every charity looks for donations and grants. So we have the ability for businesses, families and individuals to sponsor a bed, and that covers the operational costs of a farm for a year if we get all the beds covered.
So how much does it cost to sponsor a market garden bed here?
So each bed is about $2,000 tax-deductible donation for a whole year, or $197 a month tax-deductible. We also sell coffee. If we sell 20,000 bags, we're funded a 1-acre farm, and that produces up to 40,000 meals.
Brilliant. A community working bee last year doubled the number of beds at this site from 40 to 80 in just one day.
It's important for charities to have volunteers to actually do a lot of the workload. Otherwise, we would be paying somebody to do that.
So what was it that attracted you to this farm?
It's here, you can see it, it's practical, we can get involved, so we can support the project, but we can also come here and get our hands dirty and actually see the fruits of our labour, really, and you actually feel like you are contributing both financially but also in a very practical way.
You can see where the money's going, for sure.
Yeah, and you're creating something, and that's not always the case with when you donate.
Yes.
So.
This project underlines how the act of gardening can have a direct impact on some of the big crises facing communities today by churning out fresh, seasonal ingredients that make tens of thousands of meals for the most vulnerable members of the local community.
We want to get 100,000 people behind us to fund a farm every single month.
With the rising cost of living, you seem to be doing exactly the right thing at the right time.
Right product in the right place, I think.
Indoor plants really can make or break the feel of a room. But the reality is there's very few that are set and forget. We all need a little bit of TLC sometimes. And Tammy's going to show us how she keeps one of her favourites going from strength to strength.
These plants are Lepismium, and this one in particular is in dire need of a tidy up. I found them both in council cleanup and decided to grab them so I could give them a second chance. I mean, they're great plants. They're closely related to plants like Ripsalis and Christmas cactus.
Lepismiums are sometimes known as jungle cactus. Instead of spines, these ones have fluffy white tufts. Delicate flowers grow along the sides of the stems. They're really quite beautiful, and they're epiphytes, and find their niche in tree crevices using branches as support to grow.
Now, you could just wedge the pot into a tree, and because they're epiphytes, they'll use their aerial roots to cling on and climb up and around. Their roots also help capture moisture and nutrients. They're pretty hardy and forgiving. Maybe the perfect plant for a busy person. This one's still surviving. Let's take a closer look and see if we can give it a new lease on life. All along here, you can see shades of pink and purple. It's normal for many cacti and succulents to have these shades in their leaves. Especially, some of the cultivars are grown to be that colour all the time. But this level of purple and pink, and looking at the plant as a whole, the colouring is from too much sun, and probably also hasn't got much of a watering or a nutrient feed. I can also tell it's stressed out because it's quite thin and leggy, and it's got these dry flecks, which could be a response to sunburn. I know it's going to look like we're going to have almost nothing left, but I promise you it'll come back good in a few months. What I'm really looking for is growth that's still plump and discarding anything that's twiggy and looking dead. But this bit, great for propagating. So I'll be keeping these. It's looking better already, don't you think? I've chosen the healthiest of the trimmings, then putting them into a mix. So this mix is made up of equal parts horticultural charcoal, perlite, orchid bark, and potting mix. So it's moisture retentive, but well draining at the same time. So I'm not burying them too deeply, maybe about 2 centimetres, just so that they're stable in the mix. It doesn't really matter which way you put the cutting in. Roots form along the stem, so it's not going to matter either way. Now, this potting mix does need a bit of a refresh. I'm taking it out of its pot. Now, once it's out, look for any dead or rotting roots and cut them away.
Now, I'm backfilling with a well-draining mix.
Because I've cut back a lot of the stems and roots, this plant doesn't need a new pot. Place in the shade for a bit so it can adjust to the haircut, and give it some water. After a few days chilling, I'll move them into a warm, bright spot, but out of direct sun. And when new leaves appear, I'll give them a good feed to help them along. Soon enough, the Lepismium will be thriving, and I'll have enough to give away to family and friends.
Grasses have been around for 70 million years or so. And the last of the dinosaurs may have munched on them as a salad just before they became extinct. Now, unlike the dinosaurs, grasses went on to become super successful, evolving into some of the most diverse and dynamic vegetation in Australia. Upright leafy plants are often clumped into grasses, but today I'm talking about a particular family, the Poaceae, which includes cereal grasses, natural grassland, and species cultivated in lawns and pasture. Two of my favourite true grasses are the wallaby and tufted hedgehog grass. Wallaby grass is a native grass, but it's some of the most widespread and most adaptable. Now, they're all rounders. No matter the heat, the drought or the frost, they just keep growing. This species has a light and low growing habit, which makes it perfect for verges, stabilising soil and preventing erosion. The silvery flowers turn to a wheat colour as they ripen and form the seed heads, and they look great among other dry-tolerant perennials. Wallaby grass is an important habitat for moths and butterflies, providing shelter and food for caterpillars. I know wallaby grass for its multitude of uses, from harvesting the seed to make bread, to making cultural items such as fishing and hunting nets. But I just love its form, particularly in the wind. It is stunning in a garden setting. One curious little grass that I love is the tufted hedgehog grass, one of the true Australian natives. Try it out. It's a slender plant with a flower seed head that has a beautiful, soft, dense, golden bristle. And for my money, I think it would look good in a pot amongst brightly flowered perennials and ground covers. Don't be fooled by the name of the common tussock grass. It is anything but. Poa labilidieri has a graceful and elegant form that looks great wafting in a breeze, which belies the fact they are just about the toughest in their field. For garden designers, the common tussock is often the go-to plant for softening hard landscape features or creating a calming space when planted en masse. And it will continue to look good all through the cooler seasons. When it comes to planting out grasses, it's always good to think about their habit and what you want them to do. And with the poas, they'll always look their best if you give them enough room to develop their dome shape. Now, we've got a bit of space here in the garden. Nice backdrop, this native geranium. We clear out a bit of space, and generally, you want to hold twice the width and twice the depth as the pot. Now, in this case, we're actually pre-soaking the pot in a bucket of water, ready for planting. That's all looking pretty good in this spot. We've got it backfilled. Now I've got to just put some mulch in, then water it in. Native grasses are subtle, beautiful, and provide enormous benefits to our gardens, including the animals and insects that visit them. They're a very versatile friend, so why not find a place for them in your garden?
Still to come on Gardening Australia. Hannah shares her top propagation tips. Josh tours the striking home of a couple of landscape architects. And we meet an iconic Australian artist.
You just can't ignore the seasonal colour at this time of the year. If you want to get the look at your place, Jane's headed down to the nursery to point out a few of her personal favourites that I'm pretty sure will go straight on your list.
I'm in Monbulk in the beautiful Dandenong Ranges, which also happens to be in the heart of Melbourne's nursery industry. This nursery specialises in spectacular autumn colour, so I'm going to show you how to add some pizzazz to your garden. The two key ingredients that you'll need are a really cold climate, the colder the better, and dry, sunny autumn days. We've certainly got that cold one today. There's plenty of variety when it comes to choosing autumn trees. They come in all sorts of varieties and sizes, and I'm sure there'll be one that will suit your garden. The Acer rubrum, or autumn red Canadian maple, undergoes quite the transformation. During spring, the leaves are green, but they change to these spectacular shades of orange and red in autumn. Its shape also changes. As a young tree, it tends to be more upright, But as it grows and matures, it becomes more rounded, reaching heights up to 15 metres and about 10 metres wide. It's pretty wide, so perfect for filling up a large garden with gorgeous colour. If you live in a colder climate, this tree is for you. It's also drought tolerant. It's easy to grow, but it does prefer moist to wet, well-drained soils. And I have seen these trees growing as beautiful avenues leading up to a house. And they just look sensational if you plant them about 5 to 7 metres apart. All maples are called oasis. That's their genus name. If you look at this one, the palm of the hand is very much like the leaf shape, and that's why it's called Acer palmatum. And this cultivar is a beauty. It's called the Japanese coral bark maple, Acer senkaki. And look at that. This is why it's different. It's distinctive red bark of the young branches, especially when it's cold, loves the cold weather, and this beautiful butterscotchy yellow leaves are just fabulous. These senkakis are smallish, but they do eventually grow to about 7 metres high and 5 metres across, but over time. These trees will grow really well in a container. Just repot them into a slightly bigger one every couple of years and plant them into slightly acid soil. Keep them moist but not soaking wet, and feed them with some slow-release fertiliser in spring and early summer. And do try to find a sheltered position, because strong winds and hot sun are very big problems for these trees. This is one of the best small-growing autumn trees. It's Cornus florida, or the white-flowered dogwood. It'll grow eventually about 9 metres high by about 4 metres wide, but that'll take quite a while. I love it for its Mardi Gras of colour. That foliage is extraordinary. It puts on quite a show over all seasons, so there's bound to be something happening in your garden in every season. And during spring, it produces a profuse white bloom, and it turns into an orange-red fruit and mid-green coloured leaves in summer. During autumn, you get this spectacular bright maroon, red, yellow and scarlet foliage. And then in winter, the tree forms a distinctive alligator skin patterned bark on maturity. Flowering dogwoods can take a few years to establish in the garden, so keep up the watering in the first 4 years. And they're understory trees, so plant them in partial shade with full morning sun in a well-drained acidic soil. This Largostromia tuscarora is one of the best dark fuchsia pink flowering crepe myrtles, and just look at those autumn leaves. It is a fast-growing deciduous tree. It reaches about 6 metres tall and about 4 metres wide, and they're really good for smaller spaces. It's also known for beautiful bark. People love to touch a crepe myrtle bark. The trunk is gorgeous, a stunning feature tree in any garden. There are more options for autumn colour in your garden other than trees. Let's not forget shrubs. If you're looking for something low maintenance and tough and with deciduous colour, this Berberis thunbergii gold ring has purple leaves that turn this fantastic crimson red colour. It has got thorns on it, so you could grow it as a low hedge, and it'd be a great idea because it'll stop dogs walking on your garden. It only reaches 1 metre in height and width, so you can plant slightly closer together to create such a hedge. And while it likes full sun, it can also handle light shade. They are pretty easy to grow and care for, but you can cut them back hard in early spring to encourage bushy new growth with larger leaves. Another shrub with stunning foliage is this flame smoke bush, or Cotinus cogigrea. In the summer, their signature large panicles of smoke-like dark pink flowers appear, and they stand out really well against the green foliage. It grows about 3 metres high and wide, even more a little bit, but that doesn't matter. It fills in a spot. And when you're planting, the position in full sun or part shade is fine, and put a generous shovelful of leaf mould or compost into the planting hole. This is a plant that you don't see very often, and I wonder if it's because it's got a wonderful name. It's called Symphoricarpus orbiculatus, or the coral berry. And I love that name. It sounds like an opera of music. It's gorgeous. It's got butte foliage, yellows into oranges in autumn, but have a look at these berries. Purple berries, and they're just extraordinary. So have a bit of a sing-song in your garden when you plant this one. Strong autumn colour is one of the joys of gardening in cooler climates. And you may not have a big garden in which to experience this joy, but it doesn't matter, because if you experiment with some small deciduous shrubs, you will find great reward. Always purchase your plants from your local nurseries, just so that you learn and understand what types are going to do best in your garden.
My propagation setup is the perfect system for raising my seedlings or potting up cuttings. I just love having everything in one place, and it makes it super easy to keep an eye on all my seedlings as they grow. And like most things around here, everything's made from sustainably sourced or salvaged materials. I got this thing from the local tip shop, and I love it because it's so durable, it will never rot in this wet space. And of course, it gathers all the water into that central meeting place so I can harvest it easily. These two shelves are also from my local tip shop. The little one holds all my hand tools I use most often, while the larger one holds the bulk of my young plants growing. I love it because the metal shelf has slats in it, so all the excess water will drain freely into the sink. I use this cupboard to hide and store more gardening items like pots and a handy bucket of propagation mix, so I'm always ready to go. I'm never one to waste anything, so this bucket catches any water from the sink. And these milk crates make useful storage containers. And finally, the clear polycarbonate roof keeps me and my seedlings warm while still letting all the sunlight in.
Landscape architects are responsible for the way so many of our built environments look and feel. But have you ever wondered about what they do at their own place? Well, Josh is on his way to find out.
A cleared parcel of land in the middle of an established suburb represents opportunity on a couple of levels. It's a chance to start from scratch, to use the space in a way that suits the homeowner's lifestyle and priorities in a very specific way. But importantly, this can happen within the existing urban landscape, where the lessons on how to build and live within this environment can be considered. The success of the new design will very much depend on how receptive the owners and their architect are to the context around them. Situated in Whitegum Valley, a neighbouring suburb to Fremantle, parents of two, Joel Barker and Hannah Pannell, completed the build of their beautiful family home in 2021. Wow, you really have made the most of every square metre.
Yeah, we've packed it in, that's for sure. So we've got our veggie beds here, and this last one we've turned into a sandpit for the kids, and as they get older, we'll make that into another vegetable garden.
That's fantastic, all squeezed in.
Yeah, it fits in.
Despite the small block size, the garden still feels really spacious.
Yeah, so we've got about twice the amount of garden space to house, so 260 square metres of garden space and about 110 square metres of livable areas inside.
How has the surrounding suburb of Whitegum Valley influenced the design?
So Whitegum Valley has a lot of beautiful, mature, established trees. We're lucky enough to have a few of them here on the property. And it also has a really rich history of Italian and Greek immigrants who have brought all their knowledge of gardening and producing edible food from their small spaces. And we've tried to incorporate some of those plant species that you see a lot, like the olives and grapevines and fig trees.
Our brief to ourselves was trying to have more garden than house, essentially.
Joel and I both grew up just loving gardens, and we always wanted to have our own garden for our family to live in and just use every day. So everything about the house is really connected to the garden, and every consideration that we made when we were designing the footprint of the house was to maximise how much garden we had. So sometimes we thought, well, maybe this room could be a bit bigger, and then we thought, but then we'll lose a foot of our garden. So we made it smaller again. And I think we have never regretted that. Yeah, we just love having that space out there.
How involved were you both in the design process?
So we are both landscape architects, and even though we usually work in the landscape, we thought we'd try our hands at designing this house. We had an architect who helped us with details, but we basically designed the spaces just to work for our family. Our goal was to just keep things as small as possible for what we needed.
The big thing for us was obviously the connection to the garden itself, but also having a healthy house and not compromising on that in terms of its sustainability.
It's a solar passive house. The orientation is really important, so most of our glazing is either south or north orientated, and the main focus are these big windows behind us. In the winter, the sun comes through those big windows and heats the concrete floor, and then that keeps the house warm for the whole day. In the summer, we have an eave that hangs over the windows that stops that high summer sun from penetrating the glazing and keeps the space lovely and cool.
What were some of the design moves to keep this home nice and compact but not feeling squishy?
So the windows are really important. They really open up the space and make it feel a lot bigger than it really is. And the high ceilings play a big role in that as well. Even though the floor plan is small, you have a real sense of space when you walk in the door. We're a bit greedy when it comes to plants, so it gives the garden a full feeling and it makes it feel, I think, maybe bigger than it really is.
But the structure of the garden has really been determined by the existing trees here on site, so the 2 melaleucas and the 2 eucalypts that we have. And they sort of set the framework of where we put planting, and obviously that's been fantastic in terms of protecting and providing shade throughout the hotter months. And then we sort of work all the garden beds around that area.
All the plants are really chosen for their textures and colours, so we are interested in individual specimens, but we're really looking at it as a palette and how all of those different leaf types and the colours of the foliage work together, as well as the flowers in some seasons. But it's a garden that works whether it's flowering or not.
It is a little bit wild, so we have things growing into each other, like the butterfly bushes and the salvias, for example, and the lamandras, which fill out. And they sort of provide a lot of movement through the garden, whereas we've got sort of more structured and permanent plants, such as the westringias, that kind of hold the whole thing together a bit.
And how has the design of the landscape complemented the performance of the home as far as solar passive performance?
Yeah, so we've obviously got the silver birch and the grape, which are deciduous. So in the winter, that really helps that winter sun permeate through the glazing and onto the slab, which is a remarkable difference. And then obviously, you know, during the hotter months, we've got these fantastic trees which provide that level of protection. So yeah, it's sort of twofold working that together.
How much water does this garden need?
We're lucky enough to have a bore here, which has helped certainly to establish the plants. So the garden's about 2.5 years old. Yeah, so
we have drip irrigation everywhere, so that reduces the water wastage, I guess. It keeps things as efficient as possible. We've also used gravel in a lot of places to help with that water infiltration, particularly on the driveway, so that when we have a big rain event, all the water just infiltrates before it gets to the house.
Which cuts down on our irrigation requirements, but it's also replenishing the water table as well.
We just get so much pleasure from having our garden, and like the house is less work because there's just not as much of it, you know? There's more time to be out in the garden.
I think also that we really haven't had to compromise in the way that some people who are doing more traditional ways of building or on bigger properties might think that we have. So I think that's been a real pleasant surprise for us. We were clear about what our objectives in building and growing the garden were, but to be able to get that benefit of it every day has been really rewarding for us.
This is an absolutely stunning home.
Thank you.
It's just been designed and executed so beautifully. What does that feel like? I mean, this is a big achievement.
Thank you. I don't know, we do feel very lucky to be here, and I think it's something that we enjoy every day. We are just really grateful to be able to raise the kids here and, I don't know, just watch the garden evolving over time and watch the kids growing up in it too. Yeah, it's wonderful.
How do I know what fertiliser to use when? Well, there are lots on the market, but essentially they break down into about 3 different categories. There are mineral fertilisers, which offer a really specific amount of nutrients over a specific amount of time. And they can be great for things like native species or if you're growing indoor potted plants. The thing to remember, though, is that many of them are released when the temperatures are warmer. So in the depths of winter, they won't actually be available to the plants. At that time of the year, something like a liquid feed is great because the plants can actually uptake that almost immediately. And it's also a great way to push growth along when you're trying to get a leafy crop to develop quite quickly. And then the third type are things like organic fertilisers. They're often made of pelletised manures, and it's fantastic not only at providing nutrients for the plants, but also adding organic matter to the soil. And that's really important for building soil biology, because by feeding that soil, you're actually feeding the plants.
There's so much beauty in the natural world. We can all see it and appreciate it, but to translate it into a work of art is something special. In this next story, we get to meet a talented Australian artist, and I know you're going to love the way she sees the world.
When we came to the house, there was hardly any garden at the front. In there is a fabulous, I think they call it a nobilis plant. They're that beautiful fan-shaped pale grey palm. And at the back was a horrible brown tile stairway and a few casuarina trees. I mean, it's a simple weatherboard workers' cottage. A wonderful man called Harold, he sold us those steps. There was only 13 of them, which turned out to be the perfect number. They're fabulous because they've got patches in them, and apparently the Queen trod on them because the steps came from Mrs. Macquarie's chair, if you can believe it. My name is Cressida Campbell, and I'm an artist, and I make woodblocks and woodblock prints. It's the combination of drawing, painting, printing, and it starts with a drawing. I'm doing a series of lichen pictures. When I've drawn the whole detail, which is very detailed, I carve a line around all the detail and then I'll paint it. This is the paint draw. Yellow ochre, cadmium yellow, alizarin crimson, Indian red. I've actually got more being delivered, if you can believe it. I only make one print and I exhibit the block and the print. And that is a print. The block has been wet with paint and left that as a print. It's a strange process, but it's an interesting one. You know, people had their own handwriting, and this is my handwriting. I loved primary school. I used to climb trees and was always fascinated in drawing fruit, and I've always loved drawing detail. This was a picture of some zebras that I did when I was 10. I loved painting animals that were very graphic, like giraffes and birds that look particularly flamboyant. And for whatever reason, I had a vision of them all, the zebras rushing. There's something rather joyful about them. I've always loved plants. My mother loved plants. One of my sisters gave me one of these ferns. It's at the back. There are these spores. I love repetition. Repetition gives a feeling of sort of peace. I adore paths. Little kids sometimes think they're quite magical. There's a secretness to the best paths, I think. I mean, when I was a child, I used to love finding paths in the back of all the next-door neighbours, under bushes, and I mean, that drove them completely insane, which wasn't great. But I think it's the contrast between the wildness of nature with a man-made plan. A path makes you feel safe. Come on. One of the many things I love about plants is the sound of them. I adore the sound of the black bamboo. If you look at a piece of bamboo, each segment, it sort of goes like doing, doing, doing. It's not a straight pipe, but it's elusive how hard they are to draw. I'm a slave to my eyes, and so I don't like anything to look ugly. I was in hospital 3 years ago and I was in a room that had nothing but a concrete wall outside, and I just had brain surgery, and I just immediately said, I've got to be in a room with some kind of outlook. It was a brain abscess. They never found out what caused it. Well, I was painting and one morning, and I suddenly felt this on my right hand, felt as though a seagull's feather was stroking it. Unfortunately, by the end of the week, I was completely paralysed, all down the right side, and the abscess had grown into the size of a lemon. They had to do a craniotomy, and with huge relief, I gradually got better. And I can still paint, and it could be a lot worse. I'm very grateful to have the garden. I just like the idea of it being native because of the birds. Totally calming to me.
I hope you enjoyed that story as much as I did. But get ready, because now we've got your jobs for the weekend to keep you busy.
In cool temperate gardens, get those delicious, delicate bulbs of shallots into the ground this weekend. Full of flavour and fast growing, give them space when planting to form big bulbs. Grab some cardboard, compost, aged manures and mulch and cover any unproductive or bare patches in your veggie garden. This will prep your area for planting in a month or two. Suburban food swaps are a great way to reduce your food miles down to food footprints and exchange your excess produce for someone else's homegrown harvest. Get involved with one today. Warm temperate gardeners, it's a great time to get into the garden and give grapevines a good prune. Remove anything that's diseased, dead or poorly placed and prune it back to a viable leaf bud. Give your mower a good makeover. Clean it thoroughly to remove clippings, sharpen the blades and clean out the air filter. Remember to disconnect the spark plug first to be super safe. Sow some seed of the stunning schizanthus. Perfect in pots or mass planted in a semi-shaded spot, this old-fashioned annual bears loads of glorious, brightly coloured, orchid-like flowers. In subtropical gardens, give the garden a good rake and dispose of any fallen frangipani foliage that may be harbouring rust. Pop affected leaves in the bin instead of the compost. If you've sown seeds in your patch, thinning plants is a necessary evil, which reduces competition for resources and ensures healthy, happy herbs and veggies down the track. If something's snacking on your hibiscus flowers and they're falling to the ground, whack a container filled with soapy water at the base of the plants. It's a top trap for the hibiscus beetle. Gardeners in the tropics, it's time to get your dill into the ground. This dill-icious herb, with its fennel-like flavour, loves a sunny spot in your garden and is a fantastic companion plant. Bring some outrageous colour to your garden with annual celosia. Showy flowers in shades of pinks, reds, oranges, yellows, and everything in between. The kids will love them. If you're just hanging around, why not take your gardening to new heights and make a kokedama? These trendy hanging mossball planters are gorgeous and so easy to make. All the instructions are on the GA website. Arid zone gardeners, if you're picking up prickles, it's time to banish bindi eyes and burrs. The most effective way is to hand remove them when they're young or treat them with boiling water. If you're after a tough, tasty, fragrant herb for a patch at your place, whack in some winter savoury. This pretty perennial tastes like thyme and sage and is great with roast winter veg. As the nights get cool, don't forget about the chooks. A great multi-purpose insulator for the chook pen are bales of hay, which can be used in the chook run and garden later. Wherever you are, make sure you get amongst it and enjoy your time in the garden this weekend. And if you need even more inspiration, check out the Gardening Australia YouTube channel.
We're done for another week, but we've got so many more great stories just over the horizon. Here's what's in store for next time.
I'm meeting someone who has transformed this old, disused rail tunnel on their property into the perfect space to grow mushrooms in Tasmania's cool climate.
I'm visiting a project on the edge of the Hume Freeway about 2 hours north of Melbourne. And is an absolute testament to the power of plants and people.
And if you love a before and after story, then join me at my place as I celebrate 20 years of growing from this to this.